Mazel tov, Rabbi.
I'm just gonna get plates for people.
Okay. We're going to Adobe. We need you over here. We're starting off with a quiz. All right. Okay, we're going to start off with a quiz, short one, on Daf. We just finished Daf Chav Zayin. We're going to ask 10 questions on the last Daf. See how many we remember. Question number 1. According to the conclusion of the Gemara, can one make a Beis HaKnesses, a shul, into a Beis Medrash, a house of study? Meaning, which one is higher Kedusha? A Beis HaKnesses or a Beis HaMedrash? So can one make a base? Which one is holier, a shul or a? It's right at the beginning of Daf Zayin and Aleph. Remember correctly, it said that mutter lasses, you're allowed to make a Beis Medrash into a Beis Knesses. Yeah. Right, and that's what we're learning today. It's just a review of last week's. But can you make a Beis Knesses into a Beis Medrash?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Are you allowed to sell a Torah to buy another Torah? And why? Is it because the new one is holier? They have the same name. You can use the new one to learn, or you're already at the highest, nothing higher to go up to.
You're already at the highest level.
Okay. What can be placed on top of a Torah? Nevi'im, another Chumash, which is a single Torah, a single book, another Torah, or all of the above?
Another Torah.
Another Torah. Remember that picture we saw? All the Torah is piled up in that shul in Yerushalayim. Besides learning Torah, we're gonna another Torah. We'll see our score after we finish it. We'll submit it. We'll see what we scored. Besides learning Torah, what else can you sell a Sefer Torah for? For getting married, for giving tzedakah, buying a house in Israel, maybe, or celebrating Yom Tov.
How about getting married?
Getting married, that is correct.
This is a big mitzvah.
You remember a duchsusya has the word sus in the middle. But that wasn't discussed in the Gemara here. You're also allowed to do it for Pidyon Shvuyim, but it's not in this Gemara. That's in a different place. The word duchsusya has the word sus in the middle. So if you sell a shul and the leftover money you could use even for dichsusya, is that a parchment, a government official, a horseman, or a parchment and a horseman?
How about a horseman?
A group of people end up pledging money to tzedakah while they're in a different city. Should they give it to the other city, give it to whatever they want? They're able to go back and not give, or give it to poor people of their own city? I think it depends what type of appeal it was.
Yeah.
One time or ongoing?
To the poor people in their own city, I believe.
They give people in their own city where they're coming from. Okay, that's what we locked in. Reb Meir holds that one is allowed to sell a shul from a rabbim, from a public to a private shul, because it raises the kedusha. You're allowed to because the kedusha stays the same. You can't because it lowers the kedusha, or you can't because the private person is not going to treat it properly.
You can that.
According to our mayor, he's more strict. The Chachamim are more lenient, and he says you cannot because it
Really?
lowers the kedusha. It says b'roiv am hadras malach, if I remember correctly. The Chachamim hold one is allowed to sell a shul from a public to individual because it raises the kedusha. You're allowed because it stays the same. You're not allowed because it lowers it, the kedusha, or you're not allowed because the person will not treat it properly.
You can because the kedusha stays the same.
Okay. Tzedakah beribis, that means a possibility of interest, meaning it's not definite. When can it become a problem? If you are charging interest, if the buyer uses the shul and then gets their money back, the buyer can't use the shul and gets the money back, the seller uses the shul even after the sale. So the wording's a bit complicated, I think, between B and D. So when is tzedakah beribis a possibility of interest? So if I sell the shul, and 10 years later, I get a refund, I give the money back. In the meantime, the person had free use for 10 years. So when can it become a problem?
When actually the buyer can't use the shul and gets his money back nonetheless, right?
Okay, which was not one of the things that Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua did. That was one of the most recent things. Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua said he lived a long life, although he was one of the 10 martyrs who were killed. What was one of the things he did not do? He said he did not walk over another Jew, over their head. He did not call anyone by a nickname. He used to not use a shul as a shortcut. He used to say Birchas Kohanim always with a bracha. So it was 2 different people. One of them was Reb Preda.
So, not to use the shul. Wait, which was Rabbi Elazar
Ben Shamua.
a Kohen?
He was a Kohen, yes.
How about if she's Sia? Not to use the shul as a.
Actually, one of the things that Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua said he never used a shul as a shortcut.
Oh,
He never walked over another Jew.
How about as far as actually with the
He was a Kohen.
not to call someone by a nickname.
Okay, let's see how he scored.
Probably scores are pretty
View
good.
score.
Let's see how we did.
9 out of 10, a 90. Let's see. Baruch Hashem, looks like we got all of them right. The only one. What is Sadach B'Ribbis?
Oh yeah, that one I wasn't sure
The
about.
buyer can use a shul and gets his money back. Okay, I think we did excellent over here. Our score is good. Treat yourself to some cake, some.
And Yossi helped out too.
Yeah, Yossi. Yossi knows his Baruch Hashem. It's ain't Torah is no Torah like a Torah of Israel. So Yossi Baruch Hashem.
There's something about Le'anieh Eirecha, no?
Yeah, definitely. It says the poor people of your own city. Definitely, they come first.
Great. How big?
Thank you. We're going to continue now. This Gemara is a little bit of a Agadata Gemara. Agadata is like a little bit of a lighter Gemara with explanations. Interesting. That's better. Reb Preda. Remember we had the story. Why Reb Preda lived so long? Because he spent so much time teaching that one student. And Hashem paid back all the time that he spent teaching that one person, plus interest. He lived 400 years. That's a story in Mesechta Eruvin. However, that explains why Reb Preda lived to be 400 years. But until then, he just lived longer and longer. And so the students asked him, what are the reasons he lived so long? So the first thing he said was the last words on the previous Amud, the previous page, is that I was always the first one in the Beis Medrash. Besides it's an admirable, and it's a very admirable thing to always be there on time early. Don't take me as an example. But besides for that, he also did not want to bother anyone to stand up for him. And if he's there, the first one, when he walks into Shul and walks into the Beis Medrash, no one's going to have to stand up for him. The second thing, top words on the page of Chavches Amud Aleph 28a. But you can see it on the screen as well. Whenever there was a kohen present, I always let him have the mizuman, to lead the benching. Saying Rabbi Sam Revelan benching, Yehi Shem Hashem Mevarach. It's a very big kibbud, a very big honor. It's always right to give it to a kohen. And he says, I always gave it to a kohen when I was there. The Gemara will say, aren't you supposed to do that? What's unique? So that will explain soon. But he always gave it over to a kohen.
We're always asking actually, a visit for everybody, but we're also told actually sometimes actually reward that everybody gets for doing things that you're commanded. Correct.
The story of the Chassam Sofer. At one time he was by a Su'udah of some sort here. And somebody had a mizuman. Someone they were going around. Who wants to lead benching? So someone says, "I'll do it. You do it." So Chassam Sofer said, "It's not a light matter." It says in Sfarim that if somebody steals the opportunity to lead benching from someone else, jumped in when someone else is supposed to do it, they owe him 10 zuz, 10 gold coins. So it's a knas he has to pay. It's worth 10 gold coins. So
for example, it's bracha. It's 400 of them.
It's 400 of them.
I had a mice like that.
Okay, we'll hear it in a moment. So the this person said, "Okay, Rebbe, for sure, yeah, pay me 10 zuz, pay me 10 coins, and you could do Birchas Hamazon, you could lead the mizum and the benching." And Chaim Sofer said, "Okay, fine." And he took out 10 zuz, paid him the amount of money, and Chaim Sofer led the mizum. Yes, what is it, Rabbi Karp?
So in Mesechta Chulin, which in my younger days I was able to learn it, I learned in Mesechta Chulin, it says if you take away the Birchas Akisu Adam, you owe the guy $400.
Uh-huh.
So I said to myself, this is one of the cases that the Alter Rebbe says it never happened, it never will happen, but it's just that that's Hashem's rotzon, and that he wants that we should learn the Torah. Came that year by Kaporis. I used to go by Rabbi Hecht, and I made my Kaporis. And I used to walk down Kingston Avenue just to see what's going on. And as I'm walking down, I said to myself, I forgot to make Kisur Adam. So I came to on President Street in Kingston. There was another Kaporis station. And I went over there, and the guy said, and I threw the dust on somebody else's. He says, "You took away my bracha."
Wow.
I said, "Well, it'll be easy. You open your fat mouth saying this has never happened and never will happen." I said, "I'll give you $400." There's no forget it.
So yeah, he says you don't have to give him $400. He was Michael.
But you see, when the Alter Rebbe says there are certain things in Torah that never happened and never will happen. Like,
Certain things do happen.
They do happen.
So that's one thing. I never, even though he was a big Talmud Chacham, he's a Rosh Yeshiva, but he should be honored with leading the benching. He always let the Kohen do it first. And I never ate from an animal in Eretz Yisrael during the time of the Beis Hamikdash. There's a parts of every animal that was shechted, slaughtered, had to be given to the Kohen. We don't really do it nowadays, although there are certain in Eretz Yisrael, they give a symbolic part, or they redeem it to money. So I never ate from an animal before without making sure that all the gifts to the Kohen was first given. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yitzchak says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, it is prohibited to eat from an animal if the priestly portions, the gifts for the Kohen, was not given to the Kohen. Somebody who eats meat from an animal which the gifts to the Kohen have not been set aside, it's regarded as if they were eating produce, which is tevel, which meiser was not given at all, which that is Issa D'Oraisa, that's a biblical prohibition to eat tevel. Here, if you didn't eat the meat, there's no biblical prohibition per se. Just so you have to give it to the Kohen. But here, he's equating it to a D'Oraisa, to a biblical. And we learn it in Mesechta Chulin. It's a whole long arichas over there. And there's even opinions which say that in Chutz La'aretz you have to be careful about it as well. Nowadays, you don't have to give any specific part. You could just set aside any part of the animal goes to the Kohen. It's all more d'Rabbanan. And it's a mitzvah to separate it and to give it to Kohen right away. Once you shechted an animal, you're allowed to eat the meat right away, even if there's no Kohen present, because unlike, let's say, grain, where you have 100 bushels of wheat, and 2 of them have to go to the Kohen, and 10 of them have to go to the Levi. Unlike that, where you have to choose what goes to the Kohen and Levi, until you do that, you're not allowed to eat anything. Here, it's certain parts of the animal. It's a cheekbone and the front right leg, and those parts go to the Kohen, so therefore you're allowed to eat everything else. So Preda was being strict on himself, saying that even though I'm allowed to eat the rest of the meat, because we'll find the Kohen, we'll give it to the Kohen. No one's touching his part. Still, he would be strict on himself not to do it until first he saw a Kohen. until the Kohen received his parts.
How would he know that?
How would he know that? So he would, I guess he himself will go to be mashgiach when he bought it, or when they would check it and say, did you give it to the Kohen yet? If not, he'll make sure the Kohen gets it. Now, Rabbi Yitzchak says that it's not just the Rabbanan, a biblical thing. It says it's like a deraisa, and afagav the leisichos hakavasei. Halacha is not like Rabbi Yitzchak, meaning you're allowed to eat the other meat because it's specified. The parts that go to the Kohen are specified, and still he was strict on himself. Now, all three of these things, once again, Reb Preda took extra time. Right, the story of the student who had a hard time learning, that we understand. It took a lot of time to teach a student 400 times, 800 times. The coming early to the Beis Medrash, being the first one, he had to be there before anybody else. Not giving a bracha, not benching in front of a kohen, that we see has to do with giving respect where respect is due, because the Gemara will talk about it momentarily. And the third thing is that he wouldn't eat meat until the kohen received his gifts, even if it took more time. So he held himself back, and because he held himself back for more time, Hashem in turn gave him a very long life, and he lived long. Now, what? Yeah.
You said he was strict on himself, meaning he didn't eat anything from the animal?
Correct. He wouldn't eat anything until he made sure the kohen received their parts of the animal. What's interesting, the Chaim Sofer points out, Mesechta Chulin, we see that there was a point in time where the Preda lived outside of Eretz Yisrael. And outside of Eretz Yisrael, we're not really so strict about this whole thing of giving gifts to the kohen. It's only really doing it in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel. And still, the Preda was strict on it even outside of Eretz Yisrael. So being that he's very machmir in himself, halacha is not like him. And he, being that he was extra stringent with taking more time, therefore Hashem in turn gave him more time as well. Says the Gemara of Leberachli from the Kohen, Reb Preda said, I never blessed grace after meals. I never led the benching. If there was a Kohen there, and rather I gave the opportunity to a Kohen, the Meimra de Mali Yusahi, is that something special? That's what halacha is. That's what you're supposed to do. The Amar Rabbi Yechanan says, Kol Talmid Chacham shemevarich lefanav, afilu gayin gadol al haaretz, oiseh Talmid Chacham chayav misa shenemar kol masanai ohav u'maves al tikrim masanai ela masniai. Rabbi Yechanan stated that any Torah scholar, even if they're a great Torah scholar, should always honor a kohen and let them bench first, lead the benching. Always honor a kohen and let them get the aliyah first. Always honor the kohen, even if the kohen is not as wise as them. Even if it's a kohen gadol, Am Haaretz, a high priest which is ignorant, which during the times of second Beis Hamikdash, there were many kohen gadols, many high priests who did not know how to learn, not know anything about.
They bought it.
Right, it was a position that they bought. It says that there's the famous line. There's one of the qualities that a judge has to have is the Sine Betza. He has to hate money. He has to hate being bribed. Mm-hmm. So where can you find someone who's a Sine Betza, who hates being bribed? For enough money, you can find that too. As it says that Talmid Chacham, that Torah scholar, he says is chayav misa, is obligated, really a death penalty, which not necessarily doesn't mean a death penalty mamish, but it means that you're not giving enough respect to the Torah or to the office of a kohen. As it says, Kol Misanai Ohav U'maves, Shlomo HaMelech says, all those who hate Hashem desire death. Al tikr Misanai ela masnei. Don't say those who hate Hashem desire death. Rather, those who cause Hashem to be hated are the ones who desire death. And there's so the Gemara answers Ga'amar b'shavim. When a kohen is a Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar, so then he should let a kohen bench first. However, when a kohen is not a Torah scholar, then the Talmid Chacham, a Torah scholar, should be the one to lead the benching.
Didn't we just say the opposite?
Right.
Is that what he said there? That's enough.
So the answer is b'shavin she'ein shavin. When someone's equal, not equal. If you have a Torah scholar and the kohen is not a Torah scholar, then the kohen is allowed to go out. When do we say that he can't do it? B'shavin, when they're equal. Even if, let's say, the kohen is a small Torah scholar, and the Torah scholar, Talmid Chacham, is a tremendous Torah scholar, so by then, even then, a kohen should go first. B'shavin. B'shavin doesn't mean that they're actually on the same caliber. It just means they're on the same strata, meaning they're both Talmid Chachams, both Torah scholars. In general, if a kohen gives reshus, a kohen gives permission, someone else is allowed to bench as well. Many people say b'reshus kohen, with the permission of the kohen, but if a kohen gives permission, you're allowed to. But a preda, even if he was a great Torah scholar, he would let always a kohen go first.
Did we reconcile what Rabbi Yochanan said with this other thing?
However, any Torah scholar, no, he says any Torah scholar, which says that who lets another ignorant kohen bless, that Torah scholar is chayav misa. Who allows someone who's an ignorant person, because he's disrespecting the whole the idea. Now the halacha, there's different. They make a difference if it's in public or if it's in private. If it's in private, there's more room to be lenient, because it's not really like, if it's a small family meal, you're not really disrespecting the Torah scholar. So there, even if a big Talmid Chacham, you can have the kohen go first. A kohen always should go first to lead the benching. Now, there's exceptions to the rule. Is if you have a guest that you want to honor, and the kohen and the person who's there are always there, you're allowed to honor the guest even if there's a kohen there. You have to get permission of the kohen, but you're allowed to. Many places they're also machmir. The kohen is the first one to make kiddush. So one person is making kiddush for everyone. It should be the kohen. If there's many people giving a drush, a speech, it should be a kohen. And a kohen is allowed to honor, to forgive his honor and to allow other people to do, except for one thing, which is when it comes to Kriyas Torah, reading the Torah.
Oh, is that why they have to leave the room or something?
So they have to leave the room. Many people today say b'reshus kohanim, right? They want to give other people an aliyah. They say, with permission of the kohen, we're calling up somebody else. The Mishnah Brura says it's not a proper thing to do. People shouldn't do it. Definitely one should be careful with this. The Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch is pretty strict on the honor of the kohen. Now we're going to Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana. Shalu Tamidav is Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana. Now we're already discussed how many people lived a long life. How many people so far? Reb Preda, Reb Lazar ben Shamua, and Reb Zakkai. Remember, Reb Zakkai, his mother sold his mother sold her tichel in order they should be able to buy wine. Now we're going to go to a fourth.
Just one comment before leaving the topic of Kohen, and then I asked the Shiloh one time because I had a bacher staying by me who was a Kohen, and the answer was it didn't make any difference how old he was. I mean, he was a 13-year-old Kohen. He he has priority in the sense of benching and things like that, even though there was a company of adults. His status as a Kohen made him equal to the adults in that particular case. So just interesting.
Definitely. I remember relearning two blot ago when we were learning about the dia, or a few blot ago, last parak, the order of who gets an aliyah first. And one of the reasons we said a kohen always goes first is shaloi lantsuya. People shouldn't come to start arguing. Right? You go first, I'm older, and this, I'm that. So Hashem always put them first, regardless. So everyone has to listen to, put the kohen gadol before. So Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana, he was a chaver, a colleague of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, although at times he's called a student of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. I asked everyone right before we started this year, what tefillah did Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana write? Remember? Ana b'chayach. Exactly. Ana b'chayach is written by Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana. Let me just... Here's Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana, where he's buried. It's in a very remote area in Eretz Yisrael. Just put that, all that up.
Reaching the bottom, this valley over here, Nachal Amud, Nechunnya ben Hakana.
See over there.
Is buried right there. How did he get here? And who exactly buried him? This incredible mystic, tzaddik, Kabbalist of proportions. Is buried over here on the Choach, and in a really remote area that requires a lot of courage to get to.
Yeah, so that's Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana, where he's buried. He was he majored, you could say. One of his greatnesses was in Kabbalah. Besides for writing in Nigla, but he also wrote in Kabbalah. The tefillah of Nechunnya ben Hakana is a famous tefillah said, entering a shul, exiting a shul. He's like one of the main sources for the idea of keser in Kabbalah. Keser, which I'm sure we've heard many, many times. Keser, Tarach Mode'ar. He was alive during the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, and he lived a very long life, and the reasons will said over here. Over here in Mesechta Baba Basra. In Pirkei Avos, Perik Beis, it says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 students. Asked them each one find the right way. It's actually, in the Gemara of Baba Basra, adds on a little bit different, adds on more to the conversation. And he asked Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana how to explain a certain pasuk, and all of his students gave a certain explanation. Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana said a different explanation, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, Nidin divrei Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana midivreichem. It seems that Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana is more precise than everyone else. Because he is somebody who gives tremendous amount of tzedakah, and therefore he could explain the whole idea of tzedakah. This is Gemara of Basra discussing the whole idea of tzedakah. So he is one of the greatest colleagues / students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He lived so long, he could be a colleague and a student. There's a Sefer HaBayir, a Sefer in Kabbalah, which Magen Mezrich brings in, which says about Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. You know, call him? He was a Kohen Gadol. He was one of the Talmidim, one of the students of Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana. So when he was able to say Hashem's name and go up to heaven, as we say this during Yom Kippur and Musaf, and asking Hashem, in heaven, is this really a decree that 10 sages have to be killed? He learned us all from Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana. And so as great as Shmuel ben Elisha, the Kohen Gadol was, the Magen Mezrich says it pales in comparison to the prophecy of Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana.
The interesting thing is that there is a Sefer Chanuch, which is about a Rabbi Shmuel going up to heaven. It sees Chanuch in heaven as actually the angel Betra is touched or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Look over here in Pirkei Avos. It's on the screen again. Let's go to the next paragraph, chapter 3. Mishnah Hey. Rabbi Nechunnya ben Hakana Imer. Let's close it. Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana says, "Kol makabel love al Torah, whoever accepts upon themselves the yoke of Torah, ma'avirin mimenu al malchus v'al derech eretz. They're exempted from the yoke of government duties and the yoke of worldly cares. If somebody throws off the yoke of Torah, they're going to very quickly find that they're going to be burdened and saddled with many other duties, government duties and other duties as well." The Rebbe explains this saying of Rabbi Nechunnya ben Hakana. What is a makabel of Torah? Someone who accepts upon themselves the yoke of Torah. So you can have somebody who learns Torah because they really enjoy it, or they found an area that they like it. But even such a person who enjoys learning Torah, has a geschmack in it, he has to learn Torah out of Kabbalah's all, out of the just accepting the yoke of heaven. If you're learning Torah because you naturally have a tendency, it's your aptitude, so then that's not considered makabel of Torah, accepting the yoke of Torah, and then this person will do whatever is natural for them. Hashem will let the world run naturally and make them have the yoke of a government and the yoke of earning a living. But if someone forces themselves and pushes themselves to learn Torah, even though they do not enjoy it, still, then Hashem will I'll go supernatural as well. You won't have to worry about making a living. You won't have to worry about the government bothering you. He was the one who composed the tefillah, the prayer of when you enter a beis medrash to learn, and when you leave a beis medrash. The Rebbe explains one of the words of his tefillah, which is in the beginning of this every Gemara. My friends should not stumble, should not do anything wrong because of me, and I should be happy with them. So he says, the Rebbe explains, it's a tefillah for your nefesh b'hamis, for your animal soul. Your godly soul does not need this tefillah, because it wants to do what's right. But if someone who's davening because of Kabbalah's accepting the yoke of heaven, so then it could even force the nefesh b'hamis, animal soul, to join in as well. So let's see what Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana says over here. Says the Gemara. Shalu Tamidus Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana. The students asked Reb Nechunnya ben Hakana, in what merit did you live such a long life? Amar Lemi told him, in all my days, I've never attained any praise at the expense of my fellow men, meaning I never let myself be honored because someone else was being put down. And I will never accept an honor if someone else will get offended. Sometimes, you win first place in a competition. I'm sure Nechunnya ben Hakana probably won all the Mishnay's Palpeh competitions when he was a kid. But he would never take any award or never any honor unless somebody else would get upset from it. Before he went to sleep, he made sure he was not upset at anyone. So he went through his entire day, everything he did, and he forgave everybody. We say similar before Kriya Shema Lamita, that Hareini Meichel, I forgive everyone. Bilvatron b'mamayni hayisi, and I gave away a lot of money. I was very open-handed, very generous. And because of these three things, he lived a long life. So we'll pause over here. We'll continue Mirz Hashem. Tomorrow, the Gemara will explain each one of these three things part by part. What's so special and unique, and how, I'll give examples, how exactly did he fulfill all of these things? I give examples of it.
What was considered a long life at the time?
So it seems a long life seems to me like 120 years. I think seems like a long life, like the Rebbe Kiva, the Elazar ben Shemua. That's what it seems like to me. It's a good question because it says about Abaya and Rava, right? That they were from the family of Kohanim, of Chafni and Pinchas.
Yeah.
One, they were supposed to pass away at the age of 20, like all the descendants of Chafni and Pinchas. One, because of their great diligence in Torah, one passed away at the age of 40, one passed away at the age of 60. I'm not sure what is considered to be a long life. In general, when the Alter Rebbe will give a bracha for a long life, the person will live to be 90 and 100 years old. When the Mittler Rebbe will give a bracha for a long life, the person lived to be between 70 and 80. When Tzemach Tzedek gave a bracha for a long life, the person will live to be between 80 and 90. And there's, I think there's explanations from the Rebbe's father or something why it was that way. But there's certain explanations why certain people live certain years, etc. We're going to continue over here with Hilchos Shabbos. So we'll first start off with an interesting video about about the halachas we're going to learn today. Where is it? So here it is. Rabbi Yankel Katz was someone who was very close to the Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe, lived in Chicago. His parents were Chassidim. He was someone who was very, very close. He had a lot of money. He gave tremendous everything he could to the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, very connected. But he was already older when the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe established. And this is his daughter. They're not, they didn't follow in the ways of Chabad, but they also had received that feeling of being very close to the Rebbe. So this is his daughter. The siman we're learning about is traveling on a ship before Shabbos. One of the big things that happened in the 1950s was the Zim ship lines. This is before jet travel became a big thing. People used to take ships. And Zim, which is an Israeli shipping company, they opened up passenger cruise lines, passenger ships to travel from Newark to Eretz Yisrael and back. And it was all manned by Jewish people, Jewish workers, Jewish captains, Jewish engineers, stewards, waiters, everything was Jewish. Everyone on the ship was Jewish. And this is one of the Rebbe's, you could say, big first or large battles, very publicly waged, you could say, was how they should not travel on Shabbos, or you cannot travel on these ship lines. There's a very interesting letter over here. People, certain people were trying writing to the Rebbe. It's not a problem the problem would be that there's Jews doing malacha on the ship. At least over 50% of the passengers for a ship to travel on Shabbos, over 50% of the passengers have to be non-Jewish. So the malacha is not being done for the Jewish people. And definitely the crew cannot be Jewish. And here, neither of these two conditions were fit. Some people tried to explain to the Rebbe that the ship could be completely automated on Shabbos to go all by itself. And the Rebbe says, I'm an engineer, working in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The Rebbe was obviously had a degree from Sorbonne. I wouldn't say educated because the Rebbe didn't need that, the degree from Sorbonne. But and the Rebbe says, whoever has even the most elementary child understanding of what a ship is, you understand it's impossible for any ship to be left alone for 24 hours. The Rebbe asks that the ships should stop or should in a port, overnight, over Shabbos in one of the European ports. And the heads of Zim were very against it. It's going to cost us too much money. First, it said we can't do it. The Rebbe says, on the route, you have ships, you have ports. Baruch Hashem, after a couple of years, this whole thing, within less than 10 years, the whole thing became almost irrelevant because almost nobody takes ships anymore to Eretz Yisrael, to Israel. Long journeys. If they do, it's a short journey, which could be done during the week. It doesn't take a week. No one's really taking 7-day trips to Eretz Yisrael on Israeli shipping companies now. And the Rebbe spoke about many of the intricacies and mechanics of the ships for these type of things. So,
10, 12 days.
So here.
Golda Jacobs is a career counselor and consultant. She grew up in Chicago, Illinois.
So I was maybe 19 and I wanted to go to Israel and I wanted to go on Zim lines. Zim lines was the Israeli shipping lines, and kids went for the summer. They would go, we went to see off a friend who had gone with an organization, and they were all dancing on board the ship. And that's the way I wanted to go to Israel. And when I was going to Israel with a friend, only two of us, and we were both 19. But my father didn't like it. It was sort of two girls alone, and so I
don't know why the sound's on here, but we'll leave with this right now.
got a ticket to go to New York to talk to the Rebbe about my trip to Israel. I went to see the Rebbe, and he said, well, why is so important for you to go on Zim lines? So I said, well, because the horror, I was an immature 19-year-old wanting to go on my first foreign trip, with a friend. And he didn't question the fact that we were going by ourselves. He didn't question the fact that we could possibly not be safe. He questioned the Zim line over and over again. You're like, why do you think that's so important? And so I just said that it's a true. Can you imagine coming into Haifa on a Jewish boat after all this? I mean, can you imagine what that would be like, and how I would like to be able to do that? And so he thought about it, and he thought about it, and he didn't say anything. He said, "I'll let you know." And not me, but he wanted to think about it. About a week later, we got a very long letter about how Zim lines really couldn't operate on Shabbos within the rules of halacha, and this principle of technology or of engineering, even though it was used, is not technically what you should be doing on Shabbos. And he said, not a word about the trip, but this description about the Zim lines and why Zim lines shouldn't be used on Shabbos and that I shouldn't go on it. Didn't tell me not to go at all or anything. I can't even remember time frames, but not too much later, I got an address and the name of somebody in Naples, Italy, who was the mashgiach for Zim lines kashrus in Naples, and the name of the moledet, which was the ship, that it left Naples on Saturday night, and it came into Israel before Shabbos of the next week, of course, and that this is the ship I should go on. This is the person in Naples that we should stay at, and that it should be a successful and happy trip. And so we went our regular route through Europe, my friend and I, without any kind of problems. On Friday, we made our way to Naples. This very kindly shliach, very old man, greeted us. We spent one of the most interesting and wonderful Shabbosim with him. And right after Shabbos, he was a portly man with beautiful beard, gallantly took us to the ship, made sure we were safe, and we sailed. So how could you, I don't know who made the arrangements. I don't know how they were made. I don't know how this was done, but it was done. And it was amazing. It was amazing because I think when I connect the two, I think he gave me the credit of knowing that I was capable of taking care of myself. And yet he put me within the range of halacha.
Yeah, so this is one of the big things that was going on in the 50s. Her name was Golda Jacobs. Her father was Rabbi Yankel Katz. Rabbi Yankel Katz was very close to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe is from Chicago. Yeah, you could say so. He never had a full beard. He never, but he was somebody who went all out for the Rebbe and the Frierdiker Rebbe and everything he could. When he heard the Frierdiker Rebbe was in Poland and was in dire straits, he went around the whole Chicago collecting, having never seen the Rebbe or the Frierdiker Rebbe. He left his family every Yom Tov just to be with the Frierdiker Rebbe. Right, so this is. So we're in Siman Ayin Dalid, Siman 74. Dinei hamaflig bisfina. Halachas of those who travel on a boat. Okay, that's just a letter of the Rebbe. You could look at it. It's very interesting. another letter of the Rebbe about going into technicalities and things like this, about the ships. Okay, that's her story. We just heard her say it. Well, that story we'll get to after the Siman Emir Hashem of the story of Rabbi Mentlik and his traveling on a ship on Shabbos, listening to Friedrich Rebbe's advice, and ended up saving his life. We'll get to that afterwards. So, now, ships many times travel for many, many days. If you're going on a long journey on a ship, you have to leave at least on Tuesday. Give at least 3 days before Shabbos to be on the ship. From Wednesday and onwards, you're not allowed to do it. Also, this is what the Rebbe adds on in the letter, quoting this halacha, that one should not schedule any medical procedures to be done on Friday afternoon. And better not even to do it on Wednesday or Thursday. The same thing. Anything which could potentially lay you down or that could disturb you from enjoying your Shabbos, you should not do even 3 days before. Now, one of the reasons, several reasons, one should not travel on a ship not before Wednesday, but one of the reasons is because traveling on a ship, people get very seasick. And it takes a few days to accustom oneself to the ship. And so if they get into the ship on Friday or Thursday or even Wednesday, they could be very sick on the ship. And the whole Shabbos won't enjoy the Shabbos. So that's one of the reasons that one has to go earlier, only from Tuesday and onwards. So the same thing the Rebbe brings out would also apply to a medical procedure. Also, many times, a malach has to be done for someone who is sick. And therefore, they also should make sure to do it earlier in the week. If you're going to perform a mitzvah, you're allowed to go even on Friday. Alter Rebbe adds many conditions to this, that you should go to the captain and tell him that he should rest, he shouldn't travel on Shabbos. And the captain has to agree, even if later on he doesn't do it, it's not your fault. But if you're going to a mitzvah, it's allowed. And if you're not going to go now, the mitzvah is not going to happen, so then you'll be allowed to go even now. That's for sailing the big ocean blue, the big seas. But a river, you're allowed to go anytime, a feel of Erev Shabbos, even on a Friday. As long as the Jew does not have to do any work on Shabbos, because you don't have currents like you have in the ocean, you're not going to get sick. Like you used to have over here in the Erie canals. Mm-hmm. They used to have pack animals dragging the ships that were going along the water, because there wasn't any sails and there wasn't any motorboards then. So they would have in the canals, you have animals dragging the ships along. So even if animals are dragging the ships, they're allowed. Alter Rebbe adds a few more conditions to this, that if it's a very shallow riverbed, less than 10 tvachim, it will be usher, be forbidden. Because then you're like walking on the ground. If you're in the air, if you're above 10 tvachim from the bottom of the river, so then you don't have the problem of Tchum Shabbos. But under that, you could have an issue. In a case when one is allowed to go on a ship in Erev Shabbos, either for a mitzvah or if it's a river, then, as long as you put your belongings onto the ship in Erev Shabbos, you're allowed to go back home. And even if you start a Shabbos at home and then you go back onto the ship on Shabbos morning, it's fine. Mm-hmm. So if you're on a ship that had made a stopover in Shabbos, stopover in Erev Shabbos, not on Shabbos itself, because if you made a ship had a stopover in Erev Shabbos in a place, you're allowed to get off the ship on Shabbos and go back on. Important that the ship should not be carrying only Jewish people. Just technicalities that if on Shabbos, if one was Friday night in their house and then they went into the ship on Shabbos, because they put their belongings there before Shabbos. So then if the ship docks on Shabbos, they can't get off the ship. This last halacha is, it says to go on a ship on Shabbos in order to daven with a minyan, and the ship is going at any rate, you can make it, there is room to permit it. But this will be talking about ships back then, which traveled on wind energy. Nowadays, a ship travels on a motor, an engine. So every additional weight on the ship is using up extra fuel. So if you're there, you're causing more fuel consumption, which will be making a malacha. But back then, it'll be allowed. That's why some people say that people could take a bus on Shabbos, less problematic. So probably, if the bus was electric, maybe it'll be different. Some will say a subway. But that's if you're in need of a big mitzvah. But at any rate, you should go. Alter Rebbe adds, you should go on you should go on an air. Make sure to be there before Shabbos, and then continue. If we'll continue on Shabbos, that shouldn't be such an issue. But you can, even if there'll be no malacha involved whatsoever, the ship cannot go for Shabbos. We're done for today. I'm just going to say a little anecdote about Rabbi Mentlik, or Mordechai Mentlik. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in the 770 Yeshiva. He was a student in the Lubavitch Yeshiva in Atvatsk, Poland.
What did you say?
Atvatsk. It's a city outside of Warsaw. And Rabbi Mentlik,
He was Rosh Yeshiva?
He was Rosh Yeshiva in 770. Here you see him pouring wine for the Rebbe for Kosher Bracha. You see. A very special person. He's standing by the Rebbe's Farbrengen. He used to serve the Rebbe. He was a very, serene, very serious, very focused person. He would stand for hours without any movement, just listening or attending to the Rebbe. He unfortunately did not have any children. He got married in 1939 in Poland. And there's a picture of his wedding, but I didn't bring it up, but this is in Poland in 1939, shortly before the Nazis invaded Poland. They invaded in Yud Zayin Elul. Already they were, the next day they were already running for their lives, place to Warsaw eventually. And in Warsaw, which held out for a few weeks against the Nazis, and eventually they managed to escape from there to Vilna, to the Russian side, and to Vilna, and to other places. And Rabbi Mentlik was one of the lucky ones, him and his wife, which managed to escape even further. And they came, they had a way of leaving Poland because I think his wife was an American citizen, and so therefore he was able to leave Poland then legally. The Germans didn't yet crack down on every single Jew. So Mordechai Mentlik, with great difficulty, manages to escape Poland. Finally, they get tickets to, they managed to escape the war and go to England. England was still neutral at that point. They did not yet enter the war. So they're able to leave, go to England. And from England, with, a lot of effort, they were able to get tickets to go to the US. Now, before he left Poland, he asked the Frierdiker Rebbe a bracha for the trip. To receive a bracha for a safe trip. So the Frierdiker Rebbe asked him, "What are your traveling plans?" So he said, "I'm going to London, England, and the next day I'm going on a boat to America. And Baruch Hashem, I already have the tickets, even though war is starting, war is happening. Baruch Hashem, I have the tickets." The Frierdiker Rebbe told him, make sure when you go to England, make sure that you review Chassidus in the shul, not in the shul. Make sure you review Chassidus in England. He didn't tell him where. So you arrived in London. Make sure that you review Chassidus in England. That's all the Frierdiker Rebbe told him. So he arrived in London and he stayed overnight in the house of the Chassid, Rabbi Yosef Avram Kagan. He welcomed him, he gave him a meal. And he says, "What time is your boat supposed to leave tomorrow? What time do you have to go?" He says, "I'm not going now. I'm going to go after Shabbos Shuvah, after Rosh Hashanah, closer to Yom Kippur. I'm going to go on that boat." He says, "What? You know, there's a war going on right now in Poland. You know that the Nazis are shelling ships that are crossing the Atlantic. You know, you don't know even if there's going to be a boat next week. It's a matter of life and death. You have to go as soon as possible. You have a go tomorrow if there's a boat going tomorrow. So Rebbe Mentler told him, before I left, I had a chiddush with the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he told me to review Chassidus in England. So I can't leave England until I fulfill the instruction that the Frierdiker Rebbe gave me. So Rabbi Kagan was also a chassid. He says, okay, if the Frierdiker Rebbe told you have to do it, then of course you're going to have to listen to him. So tonight I'm going to bring over 1 million of Jews. Get yourself ready, and you review a mimer that the Rebbe said this Rosh Hashanah, where he was still in in Warsaw with the Frierdiker Rebbe. So review a mimer from the Frierdiker Rebbe tonight. That way you fulfilled the Frierdiker Rebbe's instruction, and then tomorrow you'll be able to travel. And as soon as you could go. At that point, you never knew. Maybe even England will be invaded. Nobody knew what's going to happen. Rabbi Mentler was much younger than this Rabbi Kagan, and he told him, the Rebbe instructed me to review a mimer. Now, in order to chazer a mimer, you do it usually on Shabbos or Yom Tov in a shul, where everyone is gathered. The Jews are not busy. They could concentrate properly on it. I'm going to review a mimer on Shabbos in a shul. That's why I want to go after Shabbos. If I'm doing an instruction of the Rebbe, he says I want to do it properly, the way the Rebbe would want me to do it, not just to get by and to fulfill, my obligation. So he didn't know if there's going to be other ships leaving. There's always rumors, this might be the last one. So he stayed in London for Shabbos, and he went in different shuls. And Friday night, he chazer chassidus in one shul, Shabbos morning in another shul, between Mincha Ma'ariv and a third shul. And after Shabbos, he boarded a ship to the U.S., and he arrived in the middle of Sukkot to America. Baruch Hashem. And everyone, his wife, his family, and everyone was very happy that they arrived. And everyone was very emotional, extremely emotional. And he asked them, something unique, and they told him the original ship he's supposed to go on was torpedoed by the Germans, and there were no survivors from that ship. And his family thought that maybe he would travel on that ship, not on that one by mistake. There was very little cable communication at that point. He realized only because he listened to the Rebbe's instructions in the best way was he saved. So true, he could have done it, and he could have traveled on the ship on Shabbos, but he wanted to do everything the proper way, and that's why he ended up saving his life. Right, so Baruch Hashem. So we see that the maskana of all of this is that listening to the Rebbe, you have nothing to lose. So Yeshakayach, thank you all for